session is now called to order. Everybody is requested to rise for the singing of the national anthem. Please remain standing for the invocation to be led by Representative Amy Calixto Rubiano of the Lone District of Pasay City. Happy birthday, Ma'am.
Thank you. Let us remember that we are in the holy presence of the Lord. Almighty Father, King of kings and Lord of lords, our hearts are full of gratitude for the opportunity you have given us to gather together and perform the duties you have entrusted to us as legislators of the 17th Congress. We are dependent on you, and our trust rests in you completely. We believe that without you in our midst, our work will be meaningless and empty. Grant us your wisdom and vision as we consecrate to you all our plans and endeavors. Inspire our hearts today that our deliberations be graced only with your truth. Enlighten our minds at all times and instill in us the heart of a true public servant, to see you in the persons we work with, and we vow to serve with love, respect, and sincerity. Guide us always as we work harder to improve and strengthen the services of the government so that this would serve as a channel of your bountiful blessings and immense love for everyone. Dear Lord, we pray for all the public servants that we may always be faithful to our values and ideals, stay undaunted, and maintain principled leadership in loving service. Loving Father, we pray that we may always advance the interests of our people in the spirit of love, justice, and peace. Remind us constantly that with great power comes with great responsibilities. We humbly ask you to reign in our minds at all times so that we would always base our decisions on what is right and just. Strengthen our will to carry out faithfully our sacred duties and responsibilities as the voice of our people. Enable us to implement your will for us, no matter what difficulty it may entail. All of this we ask in the mighty name of our Lord, our model in genuine servant leadership. Amen.
Amen.
In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we call the roll of members.
The Secretary is directed to call the roll of members.
Roll call of members, honorable representatives. Abad. Abaya. Abayon. Abellanosa. Abu. Abueg. Acharon. Akop. Acosta. Acosta Alba. Adjong. Advincula. Agrao. Agabao. Aglipay Bilyar. Albano. Alcala. Alejano. Almario. Almonte, Alonte, Alvarez Franz, Alvarez Mercedes, Alvarez Pantaleon, Amante, Amatong, Andaya, Angara Castillo, Antonino, Antonio, Aquino Magsaysay, Aragones, Arbison, Arcillas, Arenas, Atienza, Aumentado, Bagaw, Bagaching, Bagilat, Banal, Barbers, Barsaga, Batawil, Batucabe, Bautista Bandigan, Bilaro, Belmonte Feliciano, Belmonte Jose Christopher, Belmonte Ricardo, Benitez, Bernos, Bertiz, Biason, Billones, Biron, Bulilia, Bundok, Bordado, Bravo Anthony, Bravo Maravida, Brosas, Bulot Bigtang, Cagas, Calderon, Caminero, Campos, Canama, Cari, Casilaw, Castelo, Calix Rubiano, Caso Franz, Caso Pedenil, Catamco, Cayetano, Celeste, Serafica, Cirilles, Chavez, Chipeco, Cuanco, Culiantes, Cortés, Cortuna, Cosalan, Crisólogo, Cua, Cuaresma, Cueva, Dalipe, Datol, Daza, De Jesus, De Venecia, De Vera, Defensor, Del Mar, Del Rosario, De Los Montalia, Dimaporo Abdullah, Dimaporo Khalid, Duavit, Durano, Di, Elago, Enverga, Erice, Erigel, Ermita Buhain, Escudero, Espina, Espino, Estrella, Eusebio, Ibardone, Fariñas, Fernando, Ferrer Juliet, Ferrer Luis, Periol, Floyrendo, Flores, Fortuno, Fuentebella, Garbin, Garcia Gwendolyn, Garcia Jose, Garcia Albano, Garin Richard, Garin Sharon, Gasataya, Gatchalian, Heron, Guana Cristina, Gomart, Gomez, Gonzaga, Gonzales Alexandria, Gonzales Aurelio Dong, Gonzales Fernando, Gorizeta, Gullias, Hernandez, Herrera D, Hofer, Halosos, Javier, Konghun, Labad-Labad, Lacson, Lagman, Lanete, Laugan, Lasatin, Liachon, Lim Kaichong, Lobrigat, Lopez Benhur, Lopez Carlo, Lopez Manuel, Loyola, Macapagal Arroyo, Maceda, Madrona, Malapitan, Manalo, Mangawang, Mangudodato Suarto, Mangudodato Sajid, Marcoleta, Marcos, Mariño, Marquez, Martinez, Matugas, Miliana, Mending, Mendoza, Mercado, Mirasol, Montoro, Nava, Nieto, Noel, Nograles Jericho, Nograles Carlo, Nolasco, Nunez Maleñaon, Waminal, Ocampo, Olivares, Ong Edwin, Ong Henry, Ortega Pablo, Ortega Vini, Pacquiao, Paduano, Palma, Pancho, Panganiban, Panotes, Papandayan, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Plaza, Primicia Sagabas, Kimbo, Radasa, Ramirez Sato, Ramos, Relampagos, Revilla, Roa Puno, Robes, Rocamora, Rodriguez Isidro, Rodriguez Maximo, Roman, Romero, Romualdez, Romualdo, Roque Hari, Roque Roelio, Sakdalan, Sagarbaria, Sahali, Salceda, Salimbangon, Salo, Salon, Sambar, Sandoval, Santos Recto, Sarmiento Cesar, Sarmiento Edgar, Savillano, Sema, Xiao, Silverio, Singson, Swansing Estrelita, Swansing Horacio, Suarez, Si Alvarado, Tambunting, Tan Angelina, Tan Milagrosa, Tan Shirney, Tejada, Teves, Chanco, Ting, Tino, Tolentino, Treñas, Tugna, Tupas, Turabi Nataman, T, Umali, Unabia, Ungab, Unico, Uy Juliet, Uy Rolando, Uy Bareta, Vargas, Vargas Alfonso, Vilarde, Velasco, Velasco Catera, Veloso, Vergara, Villapuerte, Villanueva, Villarasa Suarez, Villarica, Villarin, Bilago, Yap Artur, Yap Melesio, Yap Victor, Yu, Zamora Marcarmen, Zamora Ronaldo, Sarate, Subiri. The speaker is present. Madam Speaker, the roll call shows that 248 members responded to the call.
With 248 members present, the quorum is hereby declared. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move for the deferment of the approval of the journal of the previous session.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, I move that we now proceed with the reference of business and request that the Secretary General be directed to read the titles of bills and resolutions on first reading, as well as communications and committee reports. So move, Madam Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. The Secretary General is directed to read the bills and resolutions on first reading for referral to the appropriate committees.
Reference of business, bills on first reading, House Bill 6143, creating the Visayas Development Authority, Representative Benitez.
To the Committee on Government Enterprises and Privatization and the Special Committee on Visayas Development.
House Bill 6144, providing for Magna Carta for barangay health workers, Representative Benitez.
To the Committee on Local Government.
House Bill 6145, allowing the extension of services of retirable officials and employees in the government service, Representative Chepeco.
To the Committee on Civil Service and Professional Regulation.
House Bill 6146, further strengthening the standard of protection and enhancement of the welfare of self-employed workers and craftsmen, Representative Macapagal Arroyo.
To the Committee on Labor and Employment.
House Bill 6147, establishing PUP Sablayan Campus, Representative Cortuna.
To the Committee on Higher and Technical Education.
House Bill 6148, mandating all students in SUCs receiving scholarships, grants, or subsidy from the government to render at least 1 year of return service for every year of free tuition scholarship grant, Representative Lopez Manuel Luis.
To the Committee on Higher and Technical Education.
House Bill 6149, providing for an increase in the standing force of the AUP, Representative Balejano.
To the Committee on National Defense and Security.
House Bill 6150, granting educational benefits in the form of scholarship grants to the orphan children of uniformed government personnel. Representative Bunting.
To the Committee on Higher and Technical Education.
House Bill 6151, establishing a peace port in Ichon, Macrohon, Southern Leyte. Representative Mercado.
To the Committee on Aquaculture and Fisheries Resources.
House Bill 6153, institutionalizing National Integrated Cancer Control. Representative Vargas.
To the Committee on Health.
Resolutions. House Resolution 1174, direct the Committees on Housing and Urban Development and Transportation to inquire in the status of the planned integrated new towns as recommended in the Transport Development Plan of NEDA. Representatives Benitez and Sarmiento Cesar.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 1175, urging the Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability to investigate the alleged recent corruption in the Court of Appeals. Representative Tevez.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 1176, urging the Committee on Ways and Means to invite for discussion the BIR and BOC. Representative Tevez.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 1177, urging the Committee on Health to look into the widespread prevalence of schistomiasis in the country. Representative Sarmiento. Edgar Marie.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 1178, urging the ASEAN member states to promote fair and ethical recruitment and abolish recruitment fees. Representative Arenas.
To the Committee on Overseas Workers Affairs.
House Resolution 1179, calling for an investigation to the death of triathlon athlete Eric Nadal Medjabilio. Representatives Uy Barreta and Velasco Catera.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 1180, commending the ASEAN on its 50th founding anniversary. Representative Silverio.
To the Committee on Rules.
House Resolution 1181, urging a legislative inquiry on the accusations raised against the incumbent COMELEC Chairman Attorney Andres Bautista. Representative Erice.
To the Committee on Rules.
Communications, letter dated June 27 of Ernesto M. Pernia, Secretary NEDA.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
Letter dated July 4 of Alan S. Borromeo, CESO, DPWH.
To the Committee on Public Works and Highways.
Letters dated July 12 of General Ricardo R. Visaya, retired Administrator NIA.
To the Committee on Agriculture and Food.
Letters dated July 13 and 17 of Catalino S. Uy, OIC, DILG.
To the Committee on Local Government.
Letter dated July 19 of Pelilia C. Biloso, Director 4, COA.
To the Committee on Appropriations. One minute suspension.
Ay, nag-suspend si... okay, nagpalit.
Session resume. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, before we resume, I would like to read the guests from the gallery of Attorney Cheryl Deloso Montalia of the 2nd District of Zambales and Honorable Jeffrey Konghun of the 1st District of Zambales, namely Aquino Cortez,
Please rise to be recognized.
Erica M. Cortez, Benedicto Feralca, Christian Eposo, Geraldo Dalupang, Lugil Ragadio, Richard Lance Ritual, Leo John Ferrales, Eda Medrano, Irene Marquez, Doris Ladines, Generoso Amog, Leonidas Echon, Miguel Maniago, and May AJ. They are from the Vice Mayor's League of the Philippines Zambales chapter.
Welcome to the House of Representatives. Majority Leader.
Also, Mr. Speaker, we would like to greet the guests of Honorable George Bolet Banal of the 3rd District of Quezon City.
Please rise.
Yes, they are the teachers from FL Rizalin S. Camacho. And
Please rise. The
they are
guest of
grade 12 students from Miriam College.
Welcome to the House of Representatives.
And greeting the guests as well, we would like to greet the guests of Kong Mario Marvi Marino. They are the barangay chairman of Batangas City. Syria Lilay de Ocampo, Digna Farito,
Please
Ricardo
rise to be
Abaya,
recognized.
Lucila de Ocampo, Pastor Perez, Roberto Irene, Melesio de Lica, Melesio Evangelio, Nenelita Zarapse, Lorenzo Emburog, Moises Dudas, and Ruel Perez.
Welcome to the House of Representatives.
Also, we'd like also the guests of Representative Evelina Escudero of the 1st District of Sorsogon. These are the exchange students from Nanzan University, Japan, hosted by the Ateneo de Manila University, headed by Professor David M. Potter.
Please rise to be recognized. Welcome to the House of Representatives, guest of Congresswoman.
And also, the guests of the Honorable Sherwin Tugna, representative of Sibac, and Kong Apol Pancho of the 2nd District of Bulacan. They are from the Barangay Lagundi, Sipat and Banga, 1st of Plaridel, Bulacan. They wish to be acknowledged in this session as well. Mr. Speaker.
Welcome to the House of Representatives.
Okay.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, under the calendar of unfinished business, I move that we consider House Bill number 262 as contained in Committee Report number 5745 as submitted on the Committee of Agriculture and Food. And for this purpose, may I ask that the Secretary General be directed to read the bill. So move, Mr. Speaker.
The Secretary General, please read the bill.
House Bill number 5745, an act establishing the Coconut Farmers and Industry Development Trust Fund and providing for its management and utilization.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the parliamentary status of the bill is that it is in the period of sponsorship and debate. I move that the Honorable Jose Panganiban, Chairperson of the Committee on Agriculture and Food, be recognized.
The Honorable Panganiban, the Chairperson of the committee, is recognized.
And Mr. Speaker, to resume his interpellation, I move that we recognize the gentleman from the 1st District of Albay, the Honorable Edsel Lagman, for his continuing interpellation.
The Honorable Lagman of Albay is recognized to interpellate the sponsor. You may proceed, Honorable Lagman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor. The preparation of the Coconut Farmers and Industry Development Plan is the task of the ad hoc committee. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, distinguished interpellator, that is correct.
In discharging this function, the Coconut Farmers and Industry Development Plan shall be, and I quote, consistent with the Philippine Development Plan under Section 21 of the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, distinguished interpreter, that is correct.
What does the Philippine Development Plan say specifically on the utilization of the COCO levy funds? Distinguished sponsor.
With respect to the COCO levy and the Coconut Development Plan, the Philippine Development Plan has yet to come up with the plan for the development of the coconut industry, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor.
The Philippine Development Plan has been approved by the President, and the same has been issued, and that plan is up to 2022. And under the legislative agenda of the Philippine Development Plan, with respect to the utilization of the COCO Levy Fund, there is already a very specific mandate. Is the distinguished sponsor aware of this particular mandate?
Mr. Speaker, distinguished interpellator, the sponsor is not aware of the specific mandate as embodied in the Philippine Development Plan, Mr. Speaker.
Well, let me quote for the record, Mr. Speaker, what the Philippine Development Plan provides with respect to the utilization of the COCO levy funds. And I read the same, Mr. Speaker. It says here, consolidate all assets and benefits emanating from the coconut levy, create a coconut farmers and industry fund to exclusively, let me underscore that, exclusively benefit coconut farmers and farm workers. That is the very specific mandate of the Philippine Development Plan with respect to the utilization of the COCO plan, of the COCO levy fund. Let me repeat that, Mr. Speaker. Consolidate all assets and benefits emanating from the coconut levy period, create a coconut farmers and industry trust fund to exclusively benefit coconut farmers and farm workers. Exclusively benefit coconut farmers and farm workers. Now, with that disclosure of what is contained in the Philippine Development Plan with respect to the utilization of the COCO levy funds, I am willing to momentarily suspend my interpellation and even eventually terminate the same. And I am willing to sit down with the distinguished sponsor so that we could now discuss possible compromises and amendments to the House Bill number 5745 in order to follow the mandate of the Philippine Development Plan, more particularly prioritizing, if not exclusively, prioritizing the utilization of COCO levy funds in favor of the coconut farmers and farm workers. If the distinguished gentleman is willing to sit down with this representation, then I will momentarily suspend my interpellation so that we could discuss possible amendments to the bill.
Mr. Speaker, the sponsor is willing to sit down with the distinguished interpellator, but before we move, Mr. Speaker, I would just like to take the attention of the distinguished interpellator to Section 7 of the proposed House Bill, which provides that purpose of the trust fund. The trust fund shall be used exclusively for the ultimate benefit of coconut farmers and farm workers as embodied in the Coconut Farmers and Industry Development Plan prepared pursuant to Section 21 thereof. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, the sponsor is more than willing to sit down with the distinguished interpellator because as has been discussed by the distinguished interpellator, the purpose of the fund, as embodied in Section 7, shall be used exclusively for the ultimate benefit of the coconut farmers, Mr. Speaker.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, thank you, distinguished sponsor, for your willingness to sit down and possibly craft amendments to the proposed bill, consistent with the Philippine Development Plan.
Willingly, Mr. Speaker.
So it is the pleasure now of the sponsor.
Mr. Speaker, as just mentioned by the distinguished interpellator, the sponsor is willing to sit down with the distinguished interpellator to discuss what possible amendments, if there is any, consistent with Section 7 of the proposed House Bill, Mr. Speaker.
And consistent with the Philippine Development Plan.
With that statement of the sponsor, Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, with that, there being no other member who wishes to interpellate the sponsor, I move that we now terminate the period of sponsorship and debate.
Mr. Speaker,
Yes,
I said that I am momentarily suspending my interpellation so that I can sit down with the distinguished sponsor to craft possible amendments. If we are successful, then I will eventually terminate my interpellation. Otherwise, I will pursue my interpellation.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we would like to suspend.
Session is suspended.
Suspended.
Session resume. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, upon checking, I would like to withdraw my previous motion. I move to withdraw my previous motion to terminate the previous sponsorship and debate. So move.
Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Motion is withdrawn.
And Mr. Speaker, I move that we suspend consideration of Committee Report number 262, House Bill 5745. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, also under the calendar of unfinished business, I move that we resume consideration of Committee Report number 295 as contained in House Bill number 5828 as submitted in the Committee on Economic Affairs. And for this purpose, may I ask that the Secretary General be directed to read the title of the bill. So move, Mr. Speaker.
The Secretary General is directed to read the title of the bill.
House Bill number 5828, an act providing for the definition of public utility, further amending for the purpose of Commonwealth Act number 146, otherwise known as the Public Service Act, as amended.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the parliamentary status of the bill is that it's in the period of sponsorship and debate. I move that the Honorable Arthur Yap, the chairperson on the Committee on Economic Affairs, be recognized.
The Honorable Arthur Yap is recognized, the chairperson of Economic Affairs.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker.
And Mr. Speaker, I move that we also recognize the gentleman from the 1st District of Albay, the Honorable Edsel Lagman, for his interpellation.
The Honorable Edsel Lagman is recognized to interpellate the sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May the distinguished sponsor yield to a series of questions.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
The distinguished sponsor declared that the primary purpose of House Bill number 5828 is to make a statutory definition of public utility, although he admitted that there is already a judicial definition. Is my recollection correct?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
In National Power Corporation versus Court of Appeals, GR number 112702, dated September 26, 1997, the Supreme Court held, a public utility is a business or service engaged in regularly supplying the public with some commodity or service of public consequence, such as electricity, gas, water, transportation, telephone, or telegraph service. The term implies public use and service. Now, in another case, also defining public utility, in the case of Kilusan Mayo Unos Labor Center versus Honorable Jesus Garcia, GR number 115381, December 23, 1994, the Supreme Court held, public utilities are privately owned and operated businesses whose services are essential to the general public. They are enterprises which specifically cater to the needs of the public and conduce to their comfort and convenience. As such, public utility services are impressed with public interest and concern. In the case of Iloilo Ice and Cold Storage Company versus Public Utility Board, the High Court said, as its name indicates, The term public utility implies public use and service to the public. The principal determinative characteristic of a public utility is that of service to or readiness to serve an indefinite public or portion of the public, as such which has a legal right to demand and receive its services or commodities. The essential feature of the public use is that it is not confined to a privileged individuals, but is open to indefinite public. With this foregoing definition of public service, the distinguished sponsor branded this decision as judicial legislation. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
How does the sponsor understand judicial legislation?
Mr. Speaker, it is the judiciary defining metes and bounds and parameters of law when Congress has failed to be very clear, perhaps in clarifying certain definitions or statutes, for which reason, Mr. Speaker, we have come to Congress today to clarify the metes and bounds of public services so as we do not abrogate to the legislature having to interpret our laws.
But judicial legislation has a definite meaning. It is an abhorrent practice of the court, which has no place in our jurisprudence. But when a court, especially the Supreme Court, interprets or constructs the intention of the Constitution or a statute on a particular matter like public utility, then there is no judicial legislation. May we know if the distinguished sponsor is of the opinion that the judicial definitions I have mentioned are incorrect?
I do not have the specific legal definitions, Mr. Speaker, but the definitions so provided by the Supreme Court are precisely those definitions which we are now reflecting in the redefinition or in providing the definition for the Public Services Act and the public utilities. So as the Supreme Court, according to the Honorable Interpellator, as the Supreme Court has interpreted, we are taking the interpretations now and casting it into something clearer for Commonwealth Act 146. We are merely exercising our powers under the Constitution, our powers to legislate laws, to clarify or amend or repeal our laws. So, I feel that in our exercise of our powers, there can be no gray area in what we're trying to do. We are merely exercising our powers as provided by the Supreme Court, by the Constitution, as the Supreme Court exercises its powers to rule and interpret legal controversies, Mr. Speaker.
In other words, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor, the definitions of the Supreme Court on what is a public service are correct. As a matter of fact, the distinguished sponsor is saying that this bill incorporates the decisions of the Supreme Court in the statutory definition he is advancing. Is that correct?
Yes, these decisions of the Supreme Court form laws of the land, Mr. Speaker.
In other words, these decisions of the Supreme Court are not judicial legislation because they are a competent and appropriate construction of the intention of the Constitution as well as the Public Service Act when it mentions public utility.
Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court has had to make these findings precisely because the laws have not been clear. So in that respect, as the legislature has laid down the concept or the principles, the Supreme Court has had to supply clarity to the legislative intent precisely because they are, I refrain from using maybe not clear, Mr. Speaker, but as technology and innovation, as the world changes, the original definition of what public services are, which were crafted 81 years ago, may need to be revisited right now. You must understand that this law was crafted in 1936, even before the Philippines was a sovereign nation. At that time, we were a colony of the United States. That was even before World War II. So because of changes in innovation and technology, we may need now to revisit even these decisions, the decisions cited. These were decisions of more than 10 years ago, and so much in innovation and change has taken place. And that's the reason why I feel we must simply meet head-on what we're trying to do, which is providing a clearer definition of what public services and public utilities are, rather than discuss legal concepts of the import or effect or impact of Supreme Court decisions, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Interpolator.
What I'm trying to impress on the distinguished sponsor is that these definitions of the Supreme Court on public utility is not judicial legislation. They are competent construction of the intention of the Constitution as well as of the Congress. Is that correct?
It's not a question of whether it is correct or not correct, Mr. Speaker. This is the opinion of the Honorable Interpolator. And I will leave that with him as his opinion.
No, I am asking...
As I said, we are here, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Interpolator, simply to provide clarity to the provisions of Commonwealth Act 146.
I am not imposing my opinion on the distinguished sponsor. I am asking his opinion because he previously said that these definitions are judicial legislations, which are not. As a matter of fact, he is adopting this definition as part of the statutory definition he's trying to propose.
And, Mr. Speaker, these decisions sought to clarify the law. And that's the reason why it is called judicial legislation, because where the law has not been clear, the judiciary in its decisions have supplied clarity. And that's why it's being called judicial legislation. But as I said, I will grant the opinions and the view of the Honorable Interpolator if that is his appreciation.
No, it is not my appreciation. I'm trying to get the opinion of the distinguished sponsor because definitely judicial legislation is abhorrent in our jurisdiction, but judicial construction is not. And let me just quote Tanyada versus Yulo, GR number L43575, dated May 31, way back 1935. It says here, and I quote, "There is a sharp distinction, however, between construction of this nature and the act of a court in engrafting upon a law something that has not been something that has been omitted, which someone believes ought to have been embraced. The former is liberal construction and is a legitimate exercise of judicial power. The latter is judicial legislation forbidden by the tripartite division of powers among the three departments of government: the executive, the legislative, and judicial. So there is a great difference between judicial construction and judicial legislation. The definitions of the Supreme Court, which I have mentioned, are judicial construction, not according to the distinguished sponsor in his previous answers to the other interpreters, not judicial legislation. Now let me proceed to my other questions. May we know what is the difference between the judicial definition of public utility and the proposed statutory definition of public utility under HB number 5828?
There is actually no clear definition as provided by the Supreme Court decisions. What it has done was basically interchangeably use the definition of public services as provided by Commonwealth Act 146 and applied it to the cases that it meets in legal controversies that are brought to it. So what happens is it takes cases, it takes actual sectors and includes it in the ambit of public utilities. And in different cases, it takes different types of sectors and businesses and includes it in the enumeration of public utilities. But the common thread in these Supreme Court decisions, Mr. Speaker, is that a public utility is a public service. A public utility regularly distributes a commodity or a service of public consequence through a network. And a public service can be regulated and its operations can be taken over by the state when public interest so requires it. These are the basic broad stroke definitions that are consistent in a long line of decisions. And these are the criteria that we are putting in the bill in the hopes of clarifying the definition of what a public utility is.
In other words, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor, the definitions of the Supreme Court on public utility and the proposed statutory definition run on parallel grounds because the constituent elements are the same. One, a public utility is owned and operated to provide or render public service. Two, it offers public service on a regular basis. And there is no discrimination as to who should be served, because what is being served is the public, not a privileged few. So both the proposed definition and the statutory definition, the statutory definition as proposed and the judicial definitions are virtually the same. Now, let me go to my previous question. How does...
Mr. Speaker, Honorable Interpellator, forgive me, sir. Significantly the same, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. except for the fact that an additional criteria would be that the business or the sector being considered for inclusion under the definition of public utility must also be a natural monopoly. So we concede the argument to the honorable interpolator that substantially the criteria are the same, except for maybe one or two more that we have put in to further clarify and provide a clearer statutory definition of public utilities, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
Now, under House Bill number 5828, how is public utility defined?
Public utility is defined as a person that operates, manages, and controls for public use any of the following: the distribution of electricity, the transmission of electricity, water pipeline distribution system, or sewerage pipeline system. Then, no other person, business, or service shall be deemed a public utility unless otherwise subsequently provided by law. So the the NEDA, in consultation with the Philippine Competition Commission, can add to this list, shall recommend to Congress the classification of a person, business, or service as a public utility on the basis of the following criteria. And there we provide the criteria of what can be added to the list of public utilities. So, number one, that the person performs a public service. Second, the business or service regularly supplies and directly transmits and distributes to the public through a network, a commodity or service of public consequence. And this was lifted from Albano versus Reyes and the JG Summit case versus Court of Appeals. And then the third, that it is a natural monopoly. The fourth, that it is necessary for the maintenance of life and occupation of residents. That is also in the JG Summit case. And the fifth, the business or service is obligated to provide adequate service to the public on demand, as was also enunciated in the JG Summit case. That is how it is defined, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, distinguished sponsor, for telling us that many of the Supreme Court decisions have been incorporated in this statutory definition. Now, who manages? Because this definition only talks about operation, management, and control. Now, may I know who manages, operates, and controls a public utility? Is it not the owner?
Under the Constitution, sir, the operation, the management, and the control must be left to Filipino citizens, or if corporations, corporations that are 60-40, owned in favor of Filipinos.
In other words, antecedent to managing, operating, and controlling a public utility is the fact of ownership. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Now, the owner may be a sole proprietor, a corporation, a partnership, or an association. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
When the owner is a sole proprietor, what should be his citizenship?
Must be Filipino, sir.
As a Filipino.
For a public utility.
Yes. When the owner is a private corporation, aside from incorporating under Philippine laws, it should satisfy a citizenship requirement with respect to its capital. Is it correct?
Mr. Speaker, Honorable Interpreter, let me clarify my answer. To own a public utility or a public service corporation, one does not need to be a Filipino citizen. But to operate and control, the Constitution is very specific that it must be a Filipino, or if a corporation or association, must at least be 60-40.
For purposes of operation and control?
For
or
purposes
of ownership?
For purposes of ownership, as I said, sir, one can be a foreigner, one can be a Filipino, but for purposes of operating and controlling, one has to be a Filipino and one has to be at least 60-40 if it is a corporation.
The Constitution mentions of operation and ownership. You cannot possibly divorce ownership from management, operation, and control. All of these facets of a public utility must comply with the constitutional requisite of citizenship. Let me read in toto the pertinent provision of the Constitution. Section 11 of Article 12. No franchise, certificate, or any other form of authorization for the operation of a public utility shall be granted except to citizens of the Philippines or to corporations or associations organized under the laws of the Philippines, at least 60% of whose capital is owned by such citizens. So the two aspects here, the principal aspects of a public utility is mentioned by the Constitution: operation and ownership. I think the Constitution should be read not piecemeal, but in its entirety as a pertinent and coherent provision. So we cannot exclude from the definition of a public utility the fact of ownership. But the problem with this particular bill, it limits the definition of a public utility to operation, management, and control. And it forgot or excluded the more paramount factor of ownership. Is my reading of the Constitution, distinguished sponsor, accurate?
Madam Speaker, there is a clear distinction in law between ownership and operation and control of a business, because you can own a business and still surrender its control or operation to another entity that does not own the assets of the operating company or corporation.
Now, let me go to the basic. With respect to a public utility, the owner, whether a proprietorship, a corporation, or partnership, must comply with the citizenship requirement. Is that correct? Under the Constitution.
The owner does not have to.
Does not have to.
Does
In
not
other
have
words,
to, Mr. Speaker.
a public utility can be owned by a foreigner or by a completely foreign-owned corporation with 100% foreign capital. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, Madam Speaker. Yes, Mr. Interpellator.
That,
But
that,
the operation falls within the constitutional prohibition, the constitutional guidelines on 60-40 and Filipino citizenship on the control, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Interpellator.
Well, I think we will be running smack against the restrictions of the Constitution. And if this bill becomes a law, it could not pass the judicial scrutiny of the Supreme Court on constitutionality, because both operation and ownership should be compliant with the citizen requirement of the Constitution. Now, may I know whether in the operation of a public utility, in the management of a public utility, and in the control of public utility, there are constitutional restrictions?
Sir. Madam Speaker. Sir. I'm sorry, can I please have the question restated?
In the operation,
Yes, sir.
management, and control of a public utility, are there constitutional restrictions?
If it is a public utility, Madam Speaker, the operation must be handled by Filipinos, or if a corporation, it must be a 60-40 corporation in favor of Filipinos.
In other words, there are constitutional restrictions with respect to operation, management, and control of public utilities. The more pertinent provision reads, and I quote, that's still under Section 11, the participation of foreign investors in the governing body of any public utility enterprise shall be limited to their proportionate share in its capital, and all the executive and managing officers of such corporation or association must be citizens of the Philippines. Is that reading of the Constitution accurate?
For public utilities, sir?
Yes, we are talking only of public utilities.
No, sir.
It is not accurate. Can you please refer to your own
Okay.
copy of the Constitution?
Section
11, the last sentence of Section 11, starting with the praise, the participation of.
The participation of foreign investors in the governing body of any public utility shall be limited to their proportionate share in its capital, and all the executive and managing officers of such corporation or association must be citizens of the Philippines. Yes, sir. We confirm this provision.
Yeah. And it says here, in other words, there are constitutional restrictions with respect to the management, operation, and control of public utilities. When the Constitution says proportionate share in its capital, does that refer to ownership?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
It does. In other words, the Constitution requires a citizenship requirement with respect to ownership. We could not pass a law wherein ownership can be given to foreigners or completely foreign-owned corporations in the management, control, and operation of public utilities, because the antecedent requirement is with respect to ownership. Because a corporation or a public utility cannot operate, cannot manage or control a public utility without a grant from the government. And that grant from the government can be only granted to Filipino citizens or corporations or associations whose capital is at least 60% Filipino. I have a strong feeling, Madam Speaker, distinguished sponsor, that this bill can be a subterfuge to allow foreigners to own public utilities. I hope I am wrong, but this is my impression from the language of the bill as well as from the answers of the distinguished sponsor. Well, the silence of the distinguished sponsor was probably an affirmation of what I have said.
Madam Speaker, no, it's not. I would like to assure the honorable interpolator that my silence does not mean acquiescence
Okay.
on the point, except that it is to respectfully grant his opinion that this is his view, and we accept his view on this matter.
Now, presently, what are the enterprises which are considered public utilities? Can I have a short enumeration?
Because of the fact that these industries are in themselves natural monopolies, we have identified a few which we have provided in the bill, which is transmission and distribution of electricity, water pipeline and sewerage distribution.
What else? Are there others? How about carriage and transportation companies? Are they public utilities?
Because of the, I would say, Madam Speaker, absent a clear definition of what public utilities are, there have been cases in the Supreme Court where common carriers were considered public utilities.
And common carriers, or the business of common carriers and transportation, they have to get a franchise or certificate of public convenience. Is that correct?
In today's legal reality, it would be a franchise or an authorization to operate.
Okay.
Since the law has done away with certificates of public convenience and necessities. And public service corporations and public utilities that will be covered by this bill, if passed into law, would continue to be regulated by the government and would continue to need franchises and authorizations from government to operate.
How about telecommunication companies? Are they considered public utilities?
In today's parlance, it is considered public utilities. And even in the future, if considered public services, Your Honor, they would still be regulated by the government and franchise would still be needed to operate them.
How about enterprises engaged in power generation? Are they considered public utilities?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Now, when this bill, per chance, becomes a law, can foreigners, without complying with the citizenship requirement on telecommunication companies?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Likewise, if this bill becomes a law, can foreigners, without complying with the citizenship requirement, engage in power generation?
Madam Speaker, power generation under the IPIRA law is not a public utility, but transmission and generation are.
So let's limit that to transmission and, how do you call that?
Transmission and distribution.
And distribution.
Yes.
Well, if this bill becomes a law, can foreigners, without satisfying the citizenship requirement under the Constitution, engage in transmission and distribution of power?
If this bill is passed into law, foreigners will still have to comply with the 60-40 for operation and control.
No, I'm asking for ownership. Can they own?
They can.
They can.
They can. They already do. They
If,
already can.
This bill becomes a law, can foreigners, without satisfying the citizenship requirement, own transportation companies or utilities engaged in public carriage?
They can, sir.
They can. when this bill becomes a law, can foreigners, without satisfying this citizenship requirement, engage in water pipeline distribution system or sewerage pipeline system?
They can, as they can today.
And all of this you have mentioned can be owned by foreigners without satisfying the citizenship requirement imposed by the Constitution. But with respect to management, operation, and control, there should be a compliance with the citizenship requirement required by the Constitution. Is that correct?
If they are considered public utilities, then they must comply.
They must comply. I cannot see the wisdom while operation, management, and control should be subject to the 60% requirement on citizenship, but ownership can be 100% foreign. That I cannot comprehend, neither could I subscribe to such proposition because it is in violation of the precise language of the Constitution with respect to the ownership as well as operation of public utilities.
Madam Speaker, Mr. Interpolator, it is precisely because the Supreme Court has already ruled in the case of Tatad versus Garcia that there is a difference between the ownership and the control of these public service corporations.
What, in effect, did the Supreme Court say in Tatad versus Garcia?
Madam Speaker, Mr. Interpolator, that they are different. They can coexist differently. And therefore, the treatment under law is different as well and can be specifically provided for.
Did the Supreme Court say in Tatad versus Garcia that public utilities may be owned by foreigners without satisfying the citizenship requirement?
What Tatad versus Garcia says is, what constitutes a public utility is not their ownership, but their use to serve the public.
Yes, but my question is, did the Supreme Court rule in Tatad versus Garcia that foreigners can own to the extent of 100% public utilities?
It did not specifically say so, sir.
Okay. In Section 3, that's page 4 of the bill, there is a bracket between commission and 50 years. That is Section 3, amending Section 16 of the Commonwealth Act 146. And in the process of amendment, the citizenship requirement has been deleted. Is that correct, distinguished sponsor?
What line are we referring to, Madam Speaker?
I think the entire provision, some of which are under bracket, is from lines 11 to 26.
Page 6?
Page 4.
page 4. Line 11, to issue certificates.
Yeah, most probably more explicitly, line 16 to 26, starting from bracket, provided that
provided that thereafter certificates of public convenience and certificates of public convenience and necessity will be granted only to citizens of the Philippines or of the United States, or to corporations, co-partnerships, associations, or joint stock companies constituted and organized under the laws of the Philippines, provided that 60% of the stock or paid-up capital of any such corporations, co-partnership, association, or joint stock company must belong entirely to citizens of the Philippines or of the United States, provided further that no such certificate shall be issued for a period of more than 50 years. Madam Speaker, Mr. Interpellator, what we are trying to say here is we are trying to be consistent with the constitutional provision on the prohibition referring to control and not to ownership.
But I think the Constitution both mentions operation and ownership. So ownership cannot be divorced from operation, because there has to be Philippine ownership to the extent of 60% with respect to corporations or partnership or association, and 100% with respect to sole proprietorship. This particular deletion would send the wrong signal that in the grant of a franchise or whatever authority to a public utility enterprise, there is no more need for the applicant to comply with the citizenship requirement.
Madam Speaker, Mr. Interpellator, we still continue to reiterate that we are that whatever the amendments here are focused on the fact of staying consistent with the constitutional provision, but providing a statutory definition to clearly take out from the ambit of public services only public utilities, and thereby providing some clarity in the definition of what would fall into the constitutional prohibition.
Mr. Speaker, at the proper time, we will have to propose amendments to include the constitutional provision on the citizenship requirement with respect to operation and ownership of public utilities, in order to save this bill from a constitutional infirmity. I think we should be able to call a spade a spade. This bill puts under the rug the basic requirement of ownership, which should comply with the citizenship requirement. Why pass a bill which would defy constitutional restrictions? Why pass a bill to avoid constitutional requirements? That is why we are having this interpellation, to impress upon our members that this bill has to be amended. Otherwise, it suffers from constitutional infirmity, and we could be accused of a subterfuge to allow foreigners to own public utilities in the Philippines. As long as the Constitution provides for a citizenship requirement for the ownership and operation of public utilities, we must comply. If there is any attempt to amend that Constitution through legislative fiat, we must challenge that. If there is a need to amend the Constitution, to liberalize the economic provision, then that has to come and that has to be approved in the proper constituent or constitutional convention and ratified by the Filipino people. But pending the amendment of the Constitution, we must comply that public utilities cannot be owned by foreigners or corporations 60% of its capital are not owned by Filipino citizens. Madam Speaker, we will have to have time to craft the necessary amendments to this bill. Thank you for the opportunity of answering my interpellation. Distinguished sponsor.
Madam Speaker, Mr. Interpolator, thank you very much. And allow me to restate. There is no intention at all to change any constitutional provision. We are merely redefining Commonwealth Act 146. We are merely providing a clearer definition of what public utilities are. And therefore, let the chips fall where they fall and allow the Supreme Court to define what these are as we exercise our power in Congress wisdom to define what utilities and services are. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, sir.
That let us be worried not to pass a bill which infringes on the Constitution, particularly the economic provisions. This bill might appear to be innocuous because it redefines or makes a statutory definition of what is a public utility. But in the process, it would be allowing foreigners, as admitted by the sponsor, to own public utilities without complying with the citizenship requirement imposed by the Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Interpolator.
Thank you. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, the next member who wishes to interpolate the sponsor is the gentleman from Buhay Party List, the Honorable Jose Lito Atienza. I move that we recognize him for his interpellation.
Honorable Atienza is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Salamat po. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, thank you. With the kind indulgence of the gentleman sponsor, I just would like to clarify certain things about this measure.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. This bill, as the title says, aims to change certain provisions of Republic Act 146. Is that correct?
Not so much as change, but add by providing a statutory definition for public utilities, Madam Speaker, Your Honor.
In the opinion of the sponsor, therefore, may I be allowed to inquire what is wrong with Republic Act 146 and the provisions that you would want to amend?
Sir, since Commonwealth Act 146, Your Honor, Madam Speaker, was written 81 years ago, many of the businesses and public service many of the businesses that are included in that provision defining public services, the definition for these public services have been interchanged with the public utility because there was no definition, Madam Speaker, for what a public utility is. And now, since, Mr. Interpolator, there is no clear statutory definition for what public utilities are, they have been interchanged and have fallen into the constitutional prohibition in terms of operation of these businesses.
May we request the gentleman, therefore, to cite us several of these inconsistencies and provisions which are taken advantage of by certain parties?
It is not so much as inconsistency, sir. Section 13 of Commonwealth Act lists as public services, for example, sir, pontins, bridges, docks, wharves, refrigeration units, irrigation, wireless communication services, and so on and so forth. These are what was enumerated in Commonwealth Act 146 as public services. And since there is no clear definition of what public utilities are, what has been defined as public services, Your Honor, was interchanged with the definition that they have now been also considered as public utilities. So the enumeration of public services has now been considered as a public utility. Now, if that is a public utility, Your Honor, it will fall within that constitutional prohibition in terms of operation, that it cannot be operated except by Filipinos or corporations that are 60-40 Filipino-owned. And it is the view of the proponents of this bill, Your Honor, that unless we can free up the management of these corporations or these concerns or these public services, we cannot encourage more investors in these businesses.
Are you saying that this proposed bill or law carries with it specific instructions on how corporations would be structured to protect the interests of the people in our country?
There will always be that underlying safety clause because, Your Honor, Madam Speaker, just because corporations are defined as public services, if not public utilities, does not mean, sir, we are taking any company out of regulation. All the companies and businesses provided for in Commonwealth Act 146 will continue to need government regulation, permits, franchises, and authorizations to operate. There will always be that protection, Your Honor.
To be more specific, Madam Speaker, I'd like to ask the sponsor on his position on this particular provision of the Commonwealth Act 146. Transportation, processing, and marketing of agricultural products
Yes, sir.
of such third party or third party shall not be considered as operating a public service. Are you in favor of that provision, or did you change it in your new version, or you did not even notice it probably?
Your Honor, many of something may be defined as not a public utility, Your Honor, but it will continue to remain as a public service. If you're a common carrier, sir, you will still be considered a public service, and you will be required to secure the proper franchise and licenses to operate, sir. You will continue.
In your proposed law, Mr. Sponsor, did you touch on the same subject as agricultural products and other articles that are being marketed as outside of the reach of the law? So I'll be more direct, therefore. Under your idea of a reform, Commonwealth Act 146, would the operations of public markets, for instance, be considered as public service or purely economic activity of certain sectors? Because to me, this is the golden opportunity to include the operations of public markets in the total sector of public service, public utility.
I think, sir, if it's...
Otherwise, public markets now are being peddled and being even sold to the private sector. Probably due to this particular nebulous interpretation of what the public market is. It is not included in the Commonwealth Act 146. It may not be included in your reformed version. So the trade will continue. Public markets will be traded by the LGUs. Mawawala na po ng serbisyo sa mamimili na talagang kailangan naman at in fact provided for by the Constitution.
The bill, if passed into law, will allow for flexibilities, Your Honor, for the NEDA and the Competition Commission to study and endorse to Congress what can be included as public utilities. If it falls within the criteria, then they can always recommend to Congress to include it as a public utility if it passes muster of the criteria, Your Honor.
I'm sure the public would want it because when you privatize a public market, the character of public service, of the market being a public service, immediately works for the detriment of the interests of the housewives and the consumers. While we would like to protect the riders of public utility vehicles and we would like to protect the rights of consumers in the Public Service Act, we would like to protect the rights of housewives and those who do their marketing in public markets because this is the only place where they can get affordable, low-priced goods. I'd like to classify them now in your new version of public service and public utilities. Otherwise, where do they fall? Under the Consumer or the Commonwealth Act, hindi sila kasali. Under the new version that we are discussing now, they may also have been forgotten. So I'd like to get the thinking of the sponsor, if he can join me in withdrawing our mindset outside of the box. The public service is merely talking about jeepneys and buses. And no, public service involves much, much more than that. As I mentioned, public markets is a public service. And there is no law that prohibits government to sell public markets. Maynila po, wala na nga mga public market. Dahil ang tawag nila, privatization. So they go around the intention of whatever law which governs the operation of public markets by defining it as not selling. It's merely privatizing. Pwede po ba makahanap tayo ng paraan para maisali natin ito sa ating panibagong batas para ang epekto nito pakinabangan ng lahat ng sektor? Yung mga may bahay, hindi naman lumalabas, pero namimili. Mga may bahay, hindi naman sumasakay sa vapor, pero namimili. Araw-araw po nangyayari yan. And once a public market is privatized, the essence of public service is lost. What is being paid for, let's say for 20 pesos a day, for a stall in a public market, the moment it's privatized, it goes up to 120, which works against the interests of the economy and the interests of the individual families.
Madam Speaker, Your Honor, just because a public market is privatized, that does not mean, I defer to the honorable interpellator because he has had a long experience as a former local chief executive. But even if it is privatized, I believe, sir, the local governments continue to exercise control on the setting of the rates. Does it not? And in that way, is not the public protected, sir? It could be privatized, but even if it is privatized, the local government influences the setting of the rates. And in that way, the consumers are protected, are they not, sir? So, that being the case, sir, I do not see how the public's interests will just easily be sacrificed. But even so, Your Honor, we can always try to use the criteria as a test on whether public markets would fall into the ambit of public utilities.
I am quite disappointed that the sponsor doesn't seem to see the relevance of the issue that we brought forth in this exchange of position. We maintain that
No, sir.
all privatized public markets immediately work to the detriment of the private sector and works to the interests of the private businessman, given the particular privilege of practically owning a public market. And for the information of the gentleman, ang pinag-uusapan po rito hindi lamang yung palengke, kundi yung lupa na tinatayuan ng palengke. Ang mga palengke sa buong Pilipinas ay located in choice real estate properties of the government. Because they are government-owned, the stallholders are charged minimally. Once it is privatized and money are exchanged in different sides, from left to right, from right to left, tumataas siyempre ang presyo ng lahat. Presyo ng bilihin, presyo ng serbisyo, wala pong mapuntahan ang mga mahihirap dyan. Kaya ito po ang aking punto. Ito na ang pagkakataon para bigyan natin ng tamang proteksyon ang mga mamimili. I'm sure your bill envisions protection for the commuters, the public utility riders, and the ordinary citizen who will benefit out of your amendments to the Commonwealth Act. But to us, who see other problems, we cannot help but point out this may be the opportunity to put a stop to the commercialization and privatization of public markets, which are an essential public service. If the gentleman doesn't see it as a public service, then he is riding along with the intention of Commonwealth Act 146. I'd like to join him in his reformed version, but if he doesn't see it that way, I may not be able to justify it to myself, because public markets to me is an essential public service, as essential as protecting the rights of commuters taking public conveyances.
Madam Speaker, public markets were not originally considered in Commonwealth Act 146. But, Your Honor, I will join the Honorable Interpellator in the period of amendment if you would so wish to include public markets in public services. We can do so, Your Honor. I will yield to the Honorable Interpellator to include it in public services.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I'd like to point out that in letter B of Section 13 of the Commonwealth Act 146, which we are trying to refine and improve, this particular law did not realize the impact of this simple statement but affecting now families of modern times. Na yung anything connected with the cultivation of farms, it's the transportation, processing, and marketing of agricultural products, which is actually part of the operation of a public market. It's not directly saying public market, but it's saying about marketing of products, and that is the essence of public market. Shall not be considered as operating a public service. Under the American law, hindi kasali ang public markets. Under the Philippine law that we are now crafting, we probably should include it. Not only jeepneys, buses, and ferry boats and other conveyances, but operation of one of the most essential public service expected of government to control the economy and control the prices of commodities, to afford the ordinary families a cheaper priced available goods, is to address the problem of public markets being privatized. So if the gentleman would accept that, we will study the amendment that could probably fit into his proposed law. But if he's not agreeable and amenable, we're sorry to say also, we will not see the purpose of his reformatory efforts. Mahihirapan lang lalo ang tao rito.
Madam Speaker, Honorable Interpolator, as already said on the record, we will welcome the inclusion of public market in public services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'd like to mention that your proposed law now corrects certain anomalous provisions like fines to be paid for by violators in the old law do not apply anymore to modern financial conditions. 200 peso fine is nothing. So they would tend to violate and just fine and pay the fine of 200 pesos. Under your proposed law, I believe you will charge something like 5 million.
Yes, sir. Especially for the yes.
For big corporations to be abusing their rights to do business under this particular law should be given a commensurate fine that would teach them a lesson. And again, we thank him for his openness to our proposal to consider the operation of public markets also as an essential public service that our government should continue giving our people, and not to deprive them of this particular essential public service simply because they want to generate funds for the government, they want to generate funds for themselves. It's all about money, and somehow it's connected with corruption. So we will be doing the country a great service if we help plug all the loopholes of existing laws, like the old Commonwealth Act that disregards markets and marketing totally in its coverage. Maraming salamat po, Madam Speaker. And thank you,
sir.
Gentleman from Bohol. I know that you are well-intentioned and you will support our efforts. Salamat po.
Thank you very much.
Majority Floor Leader.
Yes, Madam Speaker, there being no other member who wishes to interpolate the sponsor, I move that we terminate the period of sponsorship and debate.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
And Madam Speaker, I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 5828 as contained in Committee Report number 295 submitted on the Committee of Economic Affairs. So move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, under the calendar of business for the day, I move that we consider House Bill 2433 under committee report number 307 as submitted by Committee on Justice. I so move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, copies of the said resolution or bill had been previously distributed to the members. I request, therefore, the Secretary General to read the title of the bill or resolution without prejudice to the insertion into the records of the text thereof. I so move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. The Secretary General is directed to read the title of the said resolution.
House Bill number 2433, an act creating 2 additional branches of the Regional Trial Court in the province of Batangas to be stationed in the municipalities of Santo Tomas and Agoncillo, amending for the purpose Section 14E of Batas Pambasa Bilang 129, otherwise known as the Judiciary Reorganization Act of 1980 as amended, and appropriating funds therefore.
Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that the chairperson, the vice chair of the Committee on Justice be recognized, the Honorable Representative Uwaminal, to begin the sponsorship of the measure.
Honorable
So moved, Mr. Speaker.
Uwaminal is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I move that the explanatory note of the sponsor be adopted as his sponsorship speech. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Any
Madam
objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, I move to close the period of sponsorship and debate. So move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
There being no amendments, I move to close the individual and committee amendments, Madam Speaker. So move.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, I move for the approval of the said bill on second reading. So move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Here. As many as in favor, please say aye. Aye. As many as against, please say nay. The ayes have it. The House Bill 2433 is hereby approved. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we consider for approval on second reading House Bill number 6136 under Committee Report 344 submitted by the Committee on Higher and Technical Education.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, I move for the I request therefore that the Secretary General be instructed to read the title of the bill without prejudice to the insertion into the records of the text thereof. So move, Madam Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Secretary General.
House Bill number 6136. An act declaring the 25th day of August every year as National Technical Vocational Day.
Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Chair of the Higher Technical Education, Representative Ann Hofer, for the sponsorship of the measure. So move,
Representative Hofer is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I move that the explanatory note be adopted as the sponsorship speech of the sponsor, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, I move to close the period of sponsorship and debate.
Any
So Madam Speaker, there being no committee or individual amendments, I move to close the period of individual and committee amendments. I so move.
Any objections? The chair hears none. The motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, I move for the approval on second reading, House Bill number 6136, under Committee Report 344. I so move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those against, please say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill number 6136 is hereby approved.
Madam Speaker, I move that we Bill number 6016 under Committee Report 325, submitted by the Committee on Trade and Industry. I so move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
House Bill number 6016, an act regulating the issuance, use, and redemption of gift checks, gift certificates, and gift cards.
Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we recognize the chairperson of the Committee on Trade and Industry to begin the sponsorship of the measure.
Honorable Biron is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Speaker, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the Committee on Trade and Industry, it is my great honor and privilege to sponsor House Bill number 6016, entitled An Act Regulating the Issuance, Use, and Redemption of Gift Checks, Certificates, and Gift Cards. A gift certificate, which should be as good as cash, should bear no expiry date, like money. It is a great loss and disadvantage to the bearer or owner of gift certificate, check, card, or voucher if such has an expiry date and not used up before the expiration date, especially if such gift certificate, check, card, or voucher has been obtained in exchange for cash. In a general sense, a gift certificate, check, card, or voucher is, for all intents and purposes, good as cash. It is purchased with money, and money having no expiry date, it follows that gift certificate, check, card, or voucher must bear no expiry date. It is a well-accepted view that since gift certificate, check, card, or voucher is bought with money, it must also be redeemable until used up by the holder or owner. Money does not expire unless it is already demonetized, which rarely happens. So the same must apply to gift certificate, check, card, or voucher. Let me now go to the key features of this bill. House Bill 6016 has threefold objective. One is to protect the interest of consumers with respect to the use and redemption of gift checks, gift certificates, and gift cards, promote the general welfare, and to establish standards of conduct for business and industry with respect to these transactions. Number two, to promote and encourage fair, honest, and equitable relations among parties involved in the issuance, use, and redemption of gift checks, gift certificates, and gift cards, and protect consumers against deceptive, unfair, and unconscionable sales practices. And finally, Madam Speaker, to accord value to a gift check, gift certificate, and gift card as financial instruments held in trust by the issuer on behalf of a beneficiary or bearer, and ensure that consumers are not unduly deprived of the value of such gift check, gift certificates, and gift cards. Basically, the key provisions of House Bill 6016 are as follows. One, it defines gift check, gift certificate, and gift card as instruments issued to an individual, partnership, or juridical entity for monetary consideration, honored at a single merchant or an affiliated group of merchants, as payment for consumer goods or services provided by such merchant or affiliated group of merchants upon presentation of said gift check, gift certificate, and gift card to the extent of the value, credit, or balance stored in the instrument, and which shall remain valid until cessation of business of the issuer. It exempts a gift check, gift certificate, and a gift card that is issued to consumers under an award, loyalty, or promotional program from the coverage of this Act. It declares unlawful for any party to issue and or sell a gift check, gift certificate, and gift card that contains an expiry date. Mandates that all gift checks, gift certificates, and gift cards with no expiry date at the time of the effectivity of this Act may be used indefinitely until the value, credit, or balance is used up by the bearer. Allows issuers to refuse to honor a gift check, gift certificate, and a gift card under the following circumstances. 1, when the gift check, gift certificate, and gift card is lost due to no fault of the issuer. Number 2, when the gift check, gift certificate, and gift card is mutilated or defaced due to no fault of the issuer, and such damage prevents the issuer from identifying the security and authenticity features thereof. It provides that a gift check, gift certificate, and gift card shall apply likewise to purchases of goods and services under promotional sales activities, loyalty programs, warranties, return policies for cash purchases, and discounts for senior citizens or persons with disability as provided for under relevant laws and rules and regulations. It mandates that any person who violates the provision of the law or its implementing rules and regulations shall, upon conviction, be subject to a fine of not less than 500,000 pesos, but not more than 1 million pesos, or imprisonment of not less than 1 year, but not more than 5 years, or both, upon the discretion of the court. And finally, Madam Speaker, it directs the Department of Trade and Industry and appropriate stakeholders to promulgate the rules and regulations within 90 days from the effectivity of the law. With my distinguished colleagues' help, I'm confident that this long overdue legislation can be further refined and enriched. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Biron. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we recognize the gentleman from Buhay Party List, the Honorable Representative Lito Atienza, for his interpolation. Move for 1 minute suspension.
Session resumed. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, I reiterate my motion to recognize the gentleman from Buhay Party List, the Honorable Representative Lito Atienza, for his interpolation.
Honorable Atienza is recognized for his interpolation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. I just would like to clarify with certainty the intention of this revolutionary piece of legislation. We are removing the date of expiry, correct? Am I correct to assume that? Gift certificates can no longer be considered invalid after a certain date stamped on the coupon.
Yes,
Is that
Madam
right?
Speaker, from the time of purchase, Madam Speaker.
Opo, dahil sapagkat ngayon, pinagsasamantalaan talaga ang consumer. Binayaran mo na yan, cash. Wala namang gift certificate na credit eh. Lahat cash. Binayad mo yung pera mo, hawak na nila yung pera mo, at pag hindi mo nagamit yung gift certificate, yun ay wala ng value after 1 year. So, we congratulate the intention, the authors of this bill, because it will protect the consumers' rights on getting the value of their money. So I would like to ask another question related to that. Since you are giving your money when you get the gift check, and they can hold on to your money indefinitely, would it be right to also provide in this law the granting of discount? That gift certificate should be discounted upon purchase because it is paid for in cash and the money remains in the possession of the store or the merchant. And meanwhile, the consumer is made to part exactly the amount of the gift check. Kung 5,000 yun, 5,000 ang babayad mo. Kung lagay na natin kaya rito, Madam Speaker, when all gift checks should automatically afford the consumer a 10% discount because the money does not earn in the possession of the seller of the gift check. It remains with them. In fact, they would spend the money already. If you buy a gift check at Rustan's, Rustan's will use that money and will not wait for the redemption of the gift check. So we would like to introduce an amendment to this particular consumer protection bill that automatically gift checks should provide a 10% discount when you purchase one.
One-minute suspension, Madam Speaker.
1 minute suspension. Majority Floor Leader. Session resumed. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, I would like to move to suspend the consideration of House Bill 6016.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, by leave of the House, I move that we consider bills under the calendar of business for Thursday and Friday. And Madam Speaker, pursuant to our rules, allow me to put forth an omnibus motion for consideration of the following local bills, House bills. House Bill number 3188 under Committee Report number 324. House Bill number 6102 under Committee Report number 337. House Bill number 6104 under Committee Report number 339. House Bill number 6114 under Committee Report number 341. House Bill 6129 under Committee Report number 342. House Bill number 6130 under Committee Report number 343. House Bill number 6155 under Committee Report number 346.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we consider the respective explanatory notes of the sponsors of the said measures be considered as their speeches.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, there being no member who wishes to interpolate on the said local bills, I move that we terminate the period of interpolation.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, I move that we open the period of amendments and approve on the committee amendments, if any, as contained in the respective committee reports of the aforementioned bills.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, there being no individual amendments, I move that we terminate the period of amendments.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, I move that we vote on second reading the following House bills. House Bill 3188, House Bill 6102, House Bill 6104, House Bill 6114, House Bill 6129, House Bill 6130, and House Bill 6155. So move, Madam Speaker.
Those in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. The ayes have it. House Bills 3188, 6102, 6104, 6114, 6129, 6130, and 6155 are hereby approved on second reading.
Madam Speaker, I move that we consider on second reading House Bill number 6152 under Committee Report 345, submitted by the Committee on Labor and Employment.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, I request the Secretary General to read the title of the bill. So move, Madam Speaker.
Secretary General.
House Bill number 6152. An act increasing the normal work hours per day under a compressed work week scheme, amending Articles 83, 87, and 91 of Presidential Decree number 442 as amended, otherwise known as the Labor Code of the Philippines.
Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that the chairperson of the Committee on Labor and Employment be recognized to begin the sponsorship of the measure. Congressman Randolph Ting. So move, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Ting is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to present and seek the approval of the House of Representatives of House Bill number 6152, authored principally by the Honorable Mark Go. Let the explanatory not be the sponsorship speech. Thank you.
Thank you. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, there being no individual and committee amendments, I move that we close the period of amendments. So move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, I withdraw that previous motion to close the period of amendments. So move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, the sponsor wished to propose an amendment to his bill.
Honorable Cheng is recognized.
Yes.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The committee would like to introduce a perfecting amendment to House Bill number 6152 on page 1, line 7, after the period, add another sentence to read as follows. This is without prejudice to firms whose normal work week is 5 days or a total of 40 hours based on the normal workday of 8 hours. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the amendments is accepted.
Madam Speaker, there being no other individual or committee amendments, I move that we close the period of amendments. So I so move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is
Parliamentary inquiry.
Majority Floor Leader.
Are we talking about the gifts check? No. I withdraw my inquiry.
Thank you, Congressman Atienza. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move for the approval on second reading House Bill number 6152. I so move, Madam Speaker.
All those in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. The ayes have it. House Bill 6152 is hereby approved on second reading. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill 6016. I so move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, I move that we direct the Secretary General to read the title of said measure.
Secretary General.
House Bill number 6016, an act regulating the issuance, use, and redemption of gift checks, gift certificates, and gift cards.
Madam Speaker, our parliamentary status of the bill is we are in the period of amendments. I move that we recognize the Honorable Lito Atienza for his amendments. I so move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Honorable Atienza of Buhay Party List is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I move also that we recognize the sponsor of the House Bill number 6016, the Honorable Congressman Biron.
Honorable Biron is recognized. Please proceed.
The chair recognized me or the sponsor?
I did already. You were the first one to be recognized,
Okay,
sir.
thank you, Madam Speaker. After a short caucus on the floor, we agreed on one common amendment, and we'd like to thank the sponsors who have accepted the amendment, although reducing the 10% proposal that we made to 5%. And with that, we feel that the consumers will be very, very protected and happy about these changes in the gift check distribution and sales. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Biron, what does the sponsor say?
Madam Speaker, the gentleman from Buhay Party List had suggested or introduced an amendment by putting 5% straight discount for every gift certificate that is issued by any merchant. That amendment is accepted, subject to style, Madam Speaker.
On the part of the House, is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, I move that we reopen the period of sponsorship and debate. I so move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Edsel Lagman for his interpolation. I so move, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Lagman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, will the distinguished sponsor yield to some clarificatory questions?
Yeah. Certainly, Madam Speaker, Your Honor.
Is this bill, once it is enacted into law, given a retroactive effect?
The transitory provision for on this particular bill, Madam Speaker, provides that for all gift checks that were issued prior to the effectivity of this act shall be valid and shall automatically nullify the expiry dates, Madam Speaker.
May we be guided as to what section is that, distinguished sponsor?
Your Honor, it is provided in section. What section is this? 90 days after the signing of the President. Ito. Saan yun? How about the section 11? Kasi nandito siya sa what's your mandates and offices at the time may be used indefinitely until the value is used by the bearer. Saan yun? Correct. Revision. Section 6. Madam Speaker, it is, Your Honor, it is provided in Section 6 on the prohibition, which states that it shall be unlawful for any issuer to issue or sell a gift check, gift certificate, and gift card that contains an expiry date.
Well, Madam Speaker, this is expressed in a prospective manner. That's why at the proper time, I think there should be an amendment on retroactivity, wherein this act shall be retroactive to the date of issuance of any and all gift checks. That should be placed before the separability clause. Just to be very specific that this bill, once it becomes a law, is retroactive.
Yes, Madam Speaker, this representation is amenable to the amendment that should be provided by Honorable Lagman with respect to a specific provision that will provide for retroactivity of, retroactivity of the effectivity of this bill when this bill becomes a law.
May we know, Madam Speaker, if what would be the denomination or denominations of the gift checks?
Are we talking of denominations, Your
how
Honor?
much would be the face value of the checks?
Well, the bill does not cover specific denominations, Your Honor, Madam Speaker.
Can we provide for specific denominations?
Well, we can actually provide, but it really depends on the decision or the pleasure of the merchant. Sometimes the gift certificate would be issued based on the minimum purchase or the cost of providing this gift certificate would actually be dependent on a prospective amount that the merchant might find to be profitable for them, Madam Speaker, Your Honor.
Presently, may we know from the distinguished sponsor what are the different face values or denomination of gift checks?
What is prevailing right now, Madam Speaker, Your Honor, is most of the merchants would issue at least a 500 denomination certificate, at least 500. So it can go up to as much as 1,000, 2,000, or even 5,000 per certificate.
So the distinguished sponsor feels that there is no need to provide for the face value or denomination of the checks.
Yes, Your Honor, Madam Speaker. There is really no need to provide for a specific value or provide for specific denomination for the gift certificates.
Because the giver of the gift check may give, say, 20 pieces of gift checks worth 1,000 pesos. That is possible.
That is possible, Your Honor.
So that's 20,000 pesos.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Is there a provision in the bill which would a gift check is a donation? Is that correct? From the person who buys the gift checks and gives it to another, that is a donation.
Well, it is an instrument where purchase has to be made first, Your Honor, Madam Speaker, and after buying that instrument, then it becomes a donation to whoever is the recipient of
In other words,
certificate.
Distinguished sponsor, if I buy 20 pieces of gift checks at 1,000 pesos each and gives this to a third party as my gift, that is a donation from my part.
That is correct, Your Honor.
Is there a provision in this bill which would exempt the giver of the gift check from the donor's tax?
Actually, this particular, well, as I've said, Madam Speaker, Your Honor, this is an instrument that is actually purchased. And in fact, the purchase is covered by the value-added tax because instead of buying an actual commodity, you're buying a gift check in lieu of cash. So, binibili nyo po yung gift certificate, and just like any commodity, it is subject to all applicable taxes, including value-added tax.
But how about donor's tax?
Well,
I'm just asking because this could be
there is no provision, Your Honor, there is no
issue.
provision, Madam Speaker, for any exemption or coverage of a donor's tax on the part of the giver.
So, is there a provision exempting the giver or the donor from the donor's tax?
There's none, Your Honor.
Don't you think, distinguished sponsor, that there's a need for such a provision?
Well, during the deliberation, Your Honor, Madam Speaker, we never had thought of providing exemption.
For example, one who is a godfather in marriage would like to give the bridal couple, and instead of giving cash or a particular gift, he buys, say, 100 pieces of gift certificate worth 1,000 pesos. So that's a total of 100,000 pesos. Will he be subject to a donor's tax?
Pero well, Madam Speaker, Your Honor, the law on donor's tax can always be applied. So it would really be it will be dependent on the discretion of the taxpayer or the donor whether he would declare such donation.
But I'm trying to foreclose an eventuality when the good motives of the giver will subject him to a donor's tax. But that is subject, I'm just raising this issue, subject to the consideration of the committee during the proper period of amendments. Now, let us go to Section 7. Instances where issuer may refuse to honor gift certificate, gift check, gift certificate, and gift card. It says here, under two circumstances, the issuer, and this is the establishment, the issuer is the establishment, can refuse to honor a gift check, gift certificate, or gift card which is lost to no fault of the insurer, or when the gift check, gift certificate, or gift card is mutilated or defaced due to no fault of the issuer. Is it not a fact that the issuer has a record of the gift checks he has issued in favor of a buyer of the gift check? Then if the issuer has a record, then he could issue a replacement for the lost gift check or for a mutilated gift check, because no one should profit or enrich himself at the expense of another, because he has already been paid for the value of the check.
Well, Madam Speaker, Your Honor, the only evidence of purchase is actually the invoice that is in the possession of the buyer of the gift check. Other than that, no merchant, no establishment would have an exact copy of a gift check that will be used for replacement in case of any loss.
But the establishment issuing the gift check or the issuer has a record of the transaction. So in the event of a lost gift check or gift card or a defaced one, he can always refer to his records so that a replacement can be issued. Because the principle applies that nobody should enrich himself at the expense of another. Of course, it is not his fault that the gift check is lost or defaced. But there is a remedy because the establishment has a record of the transaction. So most probably we should prescribe a period in which the issuer, upon notice, should be able to replace the gift check.
Well, perhaps, Madam Speaker, Your Honor, we can prescribe a certain period of time for a redemption if and when the gift certificate is lost or defaced.
Yeah. Most probably, upon notice, the issuer, within 30 days from such notice, should be able to issue a replacement.
Yes, that is possible, Your Honor. And provided, Madam Speaker, Your Honor, that the purchaser of that gift certificate has possession of the proof of purchase, which means that you should have the invoice or the official receipt or...
But the proof is in the custody of the enterprise which issued the check, because that invoice, just like the check, gift check could have been lost, but the records of the enterprise which issued the check is intact, and that should be the basis for the issuance of the replacement check within a period of time from notice.
Madam Speaker, Your Honor, under normal circumstances, when you buy a gift check, it's a generic purchase. You just go you just go to the merchant, buy it over the counter, and your name is not even recorded as a purchaser of that particular gift check, unless you have the invoice, the proof of your credit card payment. That's the only identifying remedy that you can present to the merchant, just to, in order to prove the identity of that purchase, Your Honor, Madam Speaker.
With that answer, the distinguished sponsor will not entertain any amendment for the issuer within X number of days from notice of loss or defacement should issue a replacement check.
Well, as I've said, Madam Speaker, Your Honor, I am willing to accept that amendment, Your Honor, provided that there is mutual protection between the merchant and the purchaser of the gift certificate.
Yes. We will provide for that at the proper time when we introduce the amendment. Madam Speaker, distinguished sponsor, thank you for entertaining my questions.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we close the period of sponsorship and debate on House Bill 6016. So move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, our parliamentary status regarding House Bill 6016 is that we have closed the period of sponsorship and debate. I move to reconsider the earlier closure of the period of amendments so that the Honorable Atienza and the Honorable Lagman may formally propose their individual amendments at the proper time. So move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill 6016. So move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Speaker, in accordance with our rules governing inquiries in aid of legislation, I move that we refer the following House resolutions to the appropriate committees. House Resolution 1161 to the Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability and Energy. House Resolution 1162 to the Committee on Ways and Means. House Resolution 1165 to the Committee on Natural Resources. House Resolution 1168 to the Committee on Health. House Resolution 1169 to the Committee on Information and Communications Technology. House Resolution 1170 to the Committee on Justice. So move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, I move that we approve the previous session. It's Journal number 10, dated August 14, 2017.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Journal number 10 of Monday, August 14, 2017 is hereby approved.
Madam Speaker, there being no more matters of the day, I move that we adjourn session until tomorrow, August 16, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So move, Madam Speaker.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Session adjourned.